Welcome, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your host for the show, Dr. Lino Martinez. Oh, yeah. Welcome back, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. Today, I'd like to introduce D. Neil Elliott. He's the author of a book called A Higher Road. He utilizes the knowledge that he's gained to reach out and contact the divine and to cleanse and rebuild his consciousness. I find no coincidence that we've crossed each other's path because this seems to be the same path that I'm on right now. So I'm just really fortunate to have you on the show. Welcome to A Little Less Fear podcast, Neil. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm going to call you Lino, but I want to respectfully say Dr. Martinez.
Whatever's more comfortable. Lino's still my name.
I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to our conversation today. And I'm hoping that I can impart some information and that piques people's interest and they check it out some more.
It is it's definitely people's interest. I do get questions and comments at the end of shows, and this topic, as far as consciousness and people finding the divine and their higher self, seems to be a very popular topic right now. So I'm very welcomed and very happy to have it. So tell us about your journey. Tell us what's on your mind. How did this come to be, and how did you come close to the divine?
Okay, so I'll give you. It's a big answer there. Okay.
That's great. I love big answers.
So I'm going to give you big as in long and to lots of talking. Excellent. So I'm going to give everybody a little briefer in terms of who I am so they have that context. So born in 1960, I'll be 62 in another couple of weeks.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Coming up early May, fully Taurus. Born in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and I've lived across Canada. And traveled the world. Second marriage, we have 3 kids between us, and I have 5 grandchildren, and they're all Texans. And I'm a professional engineer with an MBA. That's not really important, except for when we get into the book. And I've worked in the hydroelectric industry for over 30 years, mostly managing either small projects or large, a few 100,000 to 100 million. And so how did I come about to write this book? How did I get to this point? In the 1990s, so I'd be in my 30s, I, in the corporate world, and I decided that, I went into project management at that time, from engineering into project management. And I thought, I'd like to be more open and have this positive thinking stuff that came out in the 90s to really be accepting of other people's thoughts, opinions, and ideas, because now I'm working with a lot of people. So I picked up some spiritual books, Dr. Wayne Dyer, Carolyn Myss, Napoleon Hill, Tony Robbins, those kinds of books. And I studied it and I thought, okay, well, I'd like to, kind of shift my consciousness to be more receptive because, I'm an engineer, so I know what's right or wrong, good or bad, true or false, right? So,
I love how you said that you were looking into making your mind more receptive. That what made you even realize that? I've barely realized that after so much reading and research that I needed to be more of a receiver. How did you know the difference between receiving, and how did you figure that out between thinking, receiving, and putting it out there?
Well, I think I'm gonna adjust that just a little bit. I wanted to be more receptive of other people's ideas. Mm-hmm. And understand that their opinions and ideas were as important and as valid as mine.
Got it. Okay.
And that just came from reading. Mm-hmm. So I went through this process and, spent about 10 years on it to do this. And it didn't really work, because I knew what was right or wrong, true or good or bad, true or false. And so although I was more receptive and congenial and, looking at people's opinions, they would say X, Y, Z, and I'd go, yeah, okay, no, I could see that, but I don't necessarily agree with it, but I can see it. And so I was slightly more receptive, but not really understanding something that we'll talk about in a minute. And then in 2002, I went into consulting. And from 2002 to 2015, what happened is I slowly drove myself into this really deep and despondent depression. And in 2015, I knew I was in this place. I was unhappy with life. Quite frankly, I just wanted to end it. I didn't see the point. It's just like I was in a bunch of misery. I felt terrible inside. There's nothing that I was looking forward to other than, my wife and I would go have great vacations in Germany or, in Europe and stuff. And I always had fun. But when I came back to real life, like the day to day life, it's just this misery inside. And there seemed to be no point. I worked hard. I made a lot of money. I spent a lot of money. And so I picked up some newly issued spiritual books, some scientific books, and I was really trying to grasp this whole thing. One thing that always puzzled me was, okay, in science, we know there's a Big Bang, but we don't know of what. That has always bothered me. What was before the Big Bang?
Right.
So what happened though was our house had been on the market. It crashed in 2008, during that market thing that happened back then.
Yeah.
And in the area we were in, it never recovered. And so we had our house on the market for over 5 years. And finally, in late 2017, it sold. So I spent this time, 2015 to 2017, studying science books and spiritual books. In late 2017, it sold. And in early November, my wife jumped on a plane to visit family and friends in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And we were in this little 1-bedroom rental apartment. And I sat down at the kitchen table, crafted out my suicide note, and planned my suicide. I was done with life. And a week prior, some information fortuitously came to me, and it promised to liberate me from my thinking if I studied and followed it. So being the engineer, I had this little nagging doubt, if I commit suicide, I'm going to go to a really bad place. So, there's this little thing, and I'll talk about this in a moment. But then I read a near-death experience that from an author that had a near-death experience, and one thing she said was, "We're not judged after death." That I wanted to believe that, so I adopted that, and that gave me permission to sit down and craft the suicide note and plan out my suicide. So I thought, okay, this new information's come. It's promised to liberate me. I'm looking for anything to kind of hang on and give me hope, sliver of hope. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll push out the date of my suicide. I was going to do it in 3-4 months to ensure my wife would be financially okay, and say goodbye to family and friends without them knowing what I was going to do. I mean, we're all great actors in our environment. We can put forth whatever we want to clients, family, friends, right? No one really knows. You can never accurately judge the inner reality of another person.
That's for sure.
And so, so what I did is I pushed out the date of that, and I started to study this material. So that was November 2017. A year later, I woke up. My depression was totally gone. I was just full of this inner peace and love and joy. I felt totally abundant and prosperous. And 13 months, so late December 2018, I went into these 2 meditations 2 days apart. And as you go through this meditation, you raise the vibrational frequency of your consciousness. The spiritual energy flows in through the head. And then it enveloped my entire body. And I was just bathed in unconditional love. I didn't care what ailments my body had. I didn't care what anybody had done to me in the past or what I had done. I didn't care about what pains my body was experiencing. I didn't care about anything. I just wanted to stay in this state. I felt totally enveloped in unconditional love, non-judged, and it was the most wonderful, peaceful, most amazing thing that ever happened to me. And we don't have the human language to describe it. It's a feeling. It's not an intellectual thing. And I had two of those 2 days apart. At that point, I knew that the new knowledge I gained, that the process I followed was absolutely true. It's our truth. And so when I came out of that, I thought, I want to share this with everybody. And I thought, okay, well, I'd like to stand on the rooftops and shout it. And then I thought, well, I'm going to be looked at like an idiot. So it took me a couple of years to figure out the best way to do that is to write a book.
Right.
So I've written this book to share my process that I follow, the process that I followed, the new knowledge I gained, and the practice, the 7 steps that I used to take me to this state today that is this constant and mutual reciprocation of communication with the divine. And it is so inspiring and so life-giving and so, it's hard to have the language. I'm full of peace. I'm full of love. I'm full of joy. Doesn't matter what happens around me. Doesn't matter what's going on in the world. I know why everybody does what they do. I know the reasons for it. And I know why we're here and what we're meant to do. And everybody will come to this point in this lifetime or a future lifetime. And so I wanted to share this whole process with people. So I've written A Higher Road. And in that, I've structured it in 5 parts. Part 1 is an introduction to what you're going to learn. Part 2 is a very candid memoir of my life. And I'm a very private person, but I thought it was really important for people to understand examples that I've given about my own life for how the patterns of thinking and feeling that I developed and reinforced over a lifetime, how those patterns of thinking and feeling brought every experience and every event that came into my life. All of us do this. But when you understand the mechanisms of the universe, you can make a decision for yourself whether you want to transform your life or carry on living like you do. So that's part 2 of my book. Part 3 of my book is a chapter in consciousness and in science, and I use it. It's the process I followed to build this foundation that opened me up and gave me a new understanding of consciousness to be able to accept this new material that arrived in this fortuitous fashion. And this, so that this under these concepts in science, things we know today that we didn't know 100 years ago, 200 years ago, lay this foundation to open you up to accept this other information that will bridge this gap between spirituality and science. And so that's part 4, and then part 4 of the book, I share these new truths I've gained. And part 5 of the book is my experience as I personally went through the 7-step process. And so my recommended way to read A Higher Road is read it cover to cover, understand the process in its entirety. And if it resonates with you, go back and start with some of the science material or start directly with step 1. And if it doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. Then if you bought a print copy of the book, I ask that you pass it on to somebody else without colorful commentary and let them discover the process for themselves. Because, they might be in absolute misery inside, even though you think they're doing okay and they have everything in life. And it could be the biggest gift that you give them. And so I know this, but I'll put it this way. My belief is that the more people that follow this process or a similar process to get to this point, we will go back to the state that we're supposed to be in, that we need to be in order to bring this world into a new era of love and peace. And that's what I want to do. I want to help people, and I want to help this process to bring this world into a new era of love and peace.
That's incredible, Neil. What an incredible, wow. I'm blown away here. Neil, I'm a little confused if you mind backtracking from the time that you wrote the suicide letter and when you were feeling down in the dumps. How long before you woke up in that joy Did you say 13 months?
No, sorry, I dropped there. So the process, so these changes take place in your consciousness in an imperceptible way, and they happen slowly. And you need to be, dedicated to this
Right.
and practice this. But it was so. What happened was to those meditation where the spiritual energy uh, flowed through me and enveloped me. That was 13 months after I began this process.
Okay, got it.
But what happens is that, so when I started to study this new material after my suicide note, I started to study this new material. And at the 7 month mark, what happened is I started to feel this little tingling at the top of my head. And I didn't know what it was, but I just kept following the process. And then over the next month or two, that grew to probably 3, 4, 6 inches in diameter. And I realized that as it grew, what was happening was I was building new brain cells in the topmost areas of the brain underneath the skull. And those new brain cells were impressed with new knowledge, and they were vibrating at a higher frequency of vibration.
Mm-hmm.
Our source of being, whether you call it God, Allah, the Tao way, the Tao, Yahweh, whatever you want to call it, is so spiritually refined and such a high frequency of vibration, it cannot enter into you and make itself known to you until you begin this process to raise your vibrational frequency of your human consciousness.
Okay.
And when you do this, what happens then is, so as this opening expanded, I started to feel spiritual energy flow in. So this is about the 7 month mark, 7, 8 month. And the spiritual energy started to flow in, and it would flow in my head. And then sometimes it would flow down one side of my body and up the other side. Sometimes it would flow from my head to my chest and my solar plexus. Sometimes it'd be in all three at once. And that experience of that spiritual inflow of energy, of that connection with the divine, just becomes richer and more rewarding and more, for lack of a better term, magical as you carry on with this process. It is an evolving process. Your soul is here to learn lessons, and your purpose here is to enable your soul to gain mastery over your ego.
Yeah.
And it will happen in some lifetime. And when you're ready, you'll find a process that'll do this. But there's a new dispensation of energy around the world. The world needs to shift.
Yes.
But what we need is we need to understand a process that will enable us to do this. And when you have this process, you can make a conscious decision for yourself whether you want to carry on living life like you do, or totally transform your life. And I tell you, if you follow the process, your life will change. Nothing in your external environment may change in front of you, but how you view it will entirely change. We let our externalities drive our actions, reactions, and responses to life. What we see around us is really just a reflection of our beliefs. If you can change your beliefs, you change what you see.
Yes.
And the difficulty is that, hang on, I'm just going to grab a drink of water and then we'll
Go right
carry
ahead.
on
I'm
with
also
that.
going to drink some water. Yeah, we were talking here with his author name is D. Neil Elliott. He wrote the book called A Higher Road. It's incredible. Talking about coming together with your consciousness and finding your divine self. Yes, thank you. Welcome back. So, yes, continue. This is very fascinating. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no. So when we, so your soul is a fragment of divine consciousness. Your soul is a fragment of source. And the ego is the tool that is divinely ordained to create individuality out of the unity of the divine. And so at the time of conception, your soul is infused in that process and the ego is created. And the little I mind of ego takes control of building of your body, but it's using the life force energy and things we'll talk about in a moment in order to build and construct this body. And when you're a baby, so from babyhood to, kind of age 5, you're really just this sponge. You are taking in everything that's in your environment. Your brain has not developed to the point where it can make decisions on its own. So really what you're doing is you're absorbing your parents' attitudes and their language and their emotions and your siblings, etc. And so that's starting to shape your personality. It's mixing with some of the things that you're from a previous life, the knowledge that your soul had and the lessons it learned, but it's starting to mix with that. And at age 5, your personality is starting to be shaped. And at age 5, you start making decisions for yourself, and you're still being influenced by all of the people around you and going to school and all the things you're learning and stuff. But what we're doing as we grow from babyhood to adulthood, we think we're becoming versed in the ways of the world. But really what we're doing is we're letting our ego take control of our life and binding down our soul and shutting it off from the light, from its connection to source. Your ego is a tool that uses the forces of electromagnetism, and all of this is described if you follow the 7 steps. It is a tool that uses the forces of electromagnetism to create every event and every experience that comes into its life. And this is designed so that through your creativity and your ability to manifest things in your life, you attract to you the things that you need to learn and your soul wants to learn in this lifetime. You think with electrical impulses in the brain, you feel with magnetic impulses in the nervous system. The magnetic impulses in the nervous system center and bond your electrical thinking. Your thoughts is a consciousness plan, and it creates this blueprint of a future event or experience. Your feeling, be it a happy, joyous, loving feeling or a hateful, vengeful feeling, will still magnetize these consciousness forms and these blueprints to attract like. Like attracts like. And so when your egoic thinking is contrary to where we come from unconditional love, we return to unconditional love. When your egoic thinking is in contrary to unconditional love, you will create experiences and events in your life that are consistent with that thinking that will come and rebound to teach you the lessons that your soul wants to learn. Your purpose is for your soul to finally wake up and understand after many lifetimes what it's doing to itself, so that it can then start this process to dissolve these bondages of the ego and gain mastery over your life. And when it starts to do that, what it's starting to do is express itself, and itself is unconditional love. We are not here to please God. We are here to express God, and God is unconditional love.
Wow, this is incredible.
And so, yes, it is. And I'm just the messenger. So, you will come here and be reincarnated over many lifetimes in varying genders, in varying places of origin, and varying colors of skin, and varying, religious and different varying cultures, to learn the lessons, to give your soul the necessary changes in scenery and events and environments for your soul to learn the lessons it needs to learn as it is evolving through this ongoing process. And when you finally go through this process in whichever lifetime it is, this one or 300 lifetimes from now, your soul will gain mastery over your ego. You transcend your ego. And when you depart that lifetime, your body returns to dust. It's ephemeral. And your soul is infinite and eternal. So it moves on, it will step into the light, and it will not have to be reincarnated again. And so, there's a lot here that everybody needs to learn. But in this, if you follow these 7 steps, you will understand exactly what was before the Big Bang, what happened at the time of the Big Bang, the impetus for the Big Bang, how creation came about, and then how we use the tools of the universe, the law of cause and effect, to create every event and every experience that comes into our lives. And when you understand all of these mechanisms, these are things that we can now understand in science. So, for example, we know today from science, there's nothing really solid in the universe. We are all just energy. At a subatomic level, we are all just energy.
Right.
We think this body is real, but really it's solid, but really it's just energy. Now, that doesn't mean that I can go step in front of a moving bus and say I'm going to be okay because I'm more, I'm not solid. No, you're in this reality, in this human reality, your body is like a rented vehicle.
Yes.
And it's a vehicle here to help you learn whatever lessons your soul wants to learn in this lifetime. And so, I've been trying to figure this out with this analogy. So the analogy I've gotten so far is this. It might not be totally accurate, but this is kind of an analogy of it. It's like your body's this vehicle, and your ego is the driver, and your soul is in the passenger seat. But it's one of these cars that driver instructor. So there's wheels on both sides. But as your soul is kind of growing from babyhood to adulthood, it's binding down the ego, and your ego sitting in the passenger seat, or your soul sitting in the passenger seat, but it can't take control of anything because it's been bound down by these egoic thinking and responses to life. So you program, this self-driving car with your egoic responses, but your ego still has driver control. So it may make slightly different decisions than your things that you've pre-programmed. But the stuff you've programmed in your subconscious and your unconscious mind is like concrete. It's very hard to break up and dissolve. And so what you need to do is you need to start to go through this process to dissolve your these bondages of the ego, so that these bindings come off of your ego or your soul, and your soul can start to gain control of this self-driving car.
Wow.
And as you go through this process to do this, so these science books for me that I share, all of this is shared in A Higher Road. This platform based in science was so believable and rational and logical, and it's things we know in science today. It's concepts we know in science today that help me understand a few things. So first thing is that everything that I think is right or wrong, good or bad, true or false, is really just a belief. Mm-hmm. That opened up a fissure for me. And I mean, I don't just intellectually believe that. I got to the point where I actually really, truly believe it. Mm-hmm. And so if you can understand that everything you think is right or wrong, good or bad, true or false, is just a belief, now you have this fissure opened. You have the opportunity to say, well, then if it's just a belief, that means I can change my beliefs. But you need a process to do that because you've programmed your subconscious mind. If you try and just use your willpower to change those beliefs, your ego will win in the end. So what you do is you need this process. So the other thing I learned based in science, the other thing I learned, we know today that our thinking affects the expression of a cell, and the expression of a cell is the work that it does. So through your thinking, you either promote the well-being of your cells and the health of your cells, or are contrary to it. The other thing I learned was that we can grow new brain cells. Absolutely. So there's some books on neuroplasticity.
Yeah, I love it.
And then I read this book about this author that had this near-death experience. So she over a 4-year period, she was suffering from this aggressive form of cancer that left her at the end of that 4 years with tumors from her waist to her head. They were the size of lemons, and she had these open weeping lesions. She couldn't lift her head on her own. She was on oxygen 24 hours a day. She needed constant care, and her body weight dropped from normal body weight to, excuse me, to 75 to 90 pounds. I don't remember the number. She fell into a coma. They rushed her to the hospital. The admitting physicians told her husband and family she wouldn't make it through the night. She woke up 24 hours later, declared she was going to be okay. And within 2 weeks, they couldn't find a trace of cancer in her body. That's all. So all of that is documented in the hospital records. They don't know why, but it happened. So the important thing in her book is she describes what she experienced when she went through this near-death experience. And her description stretched my, kind of initial understanding of consciousness. So I used to think that everything I thought was in my brain. It was something that I learned or was exposed to or observed, right, something like that. And anything I thought was in my brain. Then I read these books around that changed my beliefs. It changed my understanding of how our thinking can affect our biology. And so I began to understand that consciousness is not only in our brains, it's actually throughout our whole body. Then I read this near-death experience when she described that she felt like she was becoming part of everything in the universe. So her description is that consciousness is imbued in everything. Then I read this new material that describes what was before the Big Bang to what happened and how we have creation. And now I can tell you that I know this. Everything that you see, touch, feel, hear, know is actually consciousness made visible. Wow. We are consciousness made visible through the descent of vibrational frequency of electrical particles. Yes. And so before the Big Bang was consciousness, but it is in a state of silence and stillness because it is these opposing impulses that are locked in this embrace. And at the time of the Big Bang, those impulses, and you'll learn what these impulses are, but they were ripped apart at the time of the Big Bang to create the material universe. And they are we see the opposing impulses as electromagnetism. So electricity is movement in consciousness, and consciousness in movement. It is our will to move out and create. And magnetism, bonding, rejection, attraction, repulsion, is the purpose to give form to this consciousness creative plan so that we can experience it. And that's the mechanisms of the ego. So when you think about the ego now, you think about what we do is we bond with everything we like. We attract everything we like. So we bond with it. So I like chocolate cake. I like that car. I like that person. I like that event. We reject things we don't like. I don't like those people. I don't like that kind of food. I don't like that kind of car. I don't want to live in that area. I don't want to go there. Those are the only mechanisms of the ego. You bond with things you like. You reject things you don't like. And those are the tools that create these consciousness blueprints for us through our thinking and our feeling that attract these like events that come into our life, that rebound to teach us the lessons that we need to learn, that our soul needs to learn. And so when you understand all of this, and it takes a while to understand this, and you need to study it, and it's easy to study and it's easy to it's easy to read, and you'll understand the language, but your understanding of a paragraph of information that you read in the first year, over time, what you understand about that. So a paragraph that I read in the first year and I thought I understood, in the second year I had a new
totally different understanding.
Yep. And the fourth year, even more deeper understanding of what that really means. It's this evolving process. But it is so magical and so amazing. And I can tell you, when I see people today, I see them as their soul. Their soul is perfect. Their soul is equal to my soul. Yes. Their soul is unconditional love.
Is that the same for every single living thing on this planet?
Every living thing on this planet, my friend.
Wow.
Anyway, when you learn this, so anything that, so I see this soul as unconditional love. Their soul is mine. We're like these method actors. You know, we've come in, we've adopted this role. It's our ego. Our souls are friends. Our souls are unconditional love. But our egos are, you know, in this little play that we're in, and they may be reprehensible and they may be doing really bad things with people. And if we were actors, we would, you know, kind of play that part. And then afterwards we'd go, hey, high five, did a good job there, you know?
Right.
We don't do that. We don't do that because we don't understand our reality is our soul. Our ego is just this tool to give us these experiences that we want to experience. And so when you understand this, you start to look at life entirely differently. Now, the sentence that I just gave you right now, I probably didn't really understand that till recently.
Wow.
That's a new insight that came to me, was that this, you know, this method actor, this is a new insight. So I get spiritual direction anytime that I just stop and I enter into this silence and this stillness. I get spiritual inflow of energy and spiritual direction. And I tell you, your life will totally change. And the way you say things will totally change.
I believe you. My life has already been changing ever since I've been meditating. I've only been meditating for about 3 years, and I haven't even been meditating that long, but I'm definitely on this journey, and I can't wait to get your book. I'm probably going to read it all in a day. How can our listeners, our viewers, and our watchers find you, Neil? You're incredible, and oh my goodness, thank you so much. How can we find you?
Okay, so the book is called The Higher Road: Cleanse Your Consciousness to Transcend the Ego and Ascend Spiritually, a 7-step process to inner peace, joy, love, abundance, and prosperity. It's by D. Neil Elliott. The website is dneilelliott.com. An easy way to get there is ahigherroad.com. All of my social media links are on there. The book is available globally wherever books are sold. It's available in print or in ebook form. You can get it in Kindle, Apple, Nook, or Kobo. Amazon delivers very quickly if you want print, or obviously in Kindle. And yeah, that's how you can get in touch with me. Contact information's on the website, so people can send me questions, or you can download a free chapter or request a free chapter, and I'll send you the first chapter in PDF format if you want to do that. So all of that's available on the website.
Wow, Neil, thank you so much. You are definitely an enlightened individual and a blessing to have met, a blessing to be on this show, on this podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your inner light, your divine wisdom, and I'm more than certain I'm going to be asking you more questions in the time to come. Thank you so much for being on A Little Less Fear podcast, and I look forward to chatting with you again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lino. And again, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning into an incredible interview with D. Neil Elliott. Cleanse your consciousness to transcend the ego and ascend spiritually. And talking about his incredible book, A Higher Road, which has a 7-step process to inner peace, joy, love, abundance, and prosperity. Thanks so much for all the subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button. It's free to subscribe. And thanks to all the new followers. You can follow me on Instagram at A Little Less Fear Podcast, on Twitter at A Little Less Fear, on LinkedIn at A Little Less Fear, on YouTube at A Little Less Fear Podcast, on TikTok at A Little Less Fear. And if you need to email me, a little less fear at gmail.com, or you can go through my website at www.alittlelessfear.com. There's a lot of little less fear, so hopefully by the end of this episode, and by the end of all my episodes, everybody will have just a little less fear and a lot more love. Thank you so much for tuning in.